Breast cancer is still the fourth most common cause of death in the UK, with 11,500 women dying each year, as well as 85 men. That's 1,000 deaths each month, 31 each day, or 1 every 45 minutes. In May 2023, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. This was a terrifying time, and while I was sure she would get through it, I was scared we'd lose a part of her. For this film, I want to look at what breast cancer is, how we get survival rates up, and look at when it goes right, and those not so lucky. Where are we with breast cancer? I spoke to Stuart Martin about this.
Both my parents had cancer. My father had brain tumours, my mother had bladder cancer, and two of my aunties had breast cancer. So cancer unfortunately runs in my family. So I've always been somewhat personally invested in trying to do my bit to improve outcomes for cancer generally. And when I was looking around about where to potentially go, my former PhD supervisor had come to Nottingham to set up a new cancer unit. So he said, there's always a place for you here in Nottingham. When I looked into the possibilities of research in Nottingham, the thing that really jumped out at me was the wonderful reputation that Nottingham had for breast cancer research. It's one of the best breast cancer research centres in the world, and it was a no-brainer for me. Nottingham, as I say, has got an international reputation for its work in breast cancer. Most breast cancer patients, if they look at their diagnostic sheets that they get, they'll see various acronyms relating to the type of cancer they've got. Two of them begin with an N, so NGS and NPI. NGS stands for Nottingham Grading System, and NPI stands for Nottingham Prognostic Index. And again, Nottingham was one of the places that initiated mammographic screening back in 1987. That has made a tremendous difference in the survival of individuals diagnosed with breast cancer. 40, 50 years ago, the chances of surviving 10 years was 40%. Yeah, but it's now up to over 80%. So it's doubled in that 40-year period. But the incidence changes according to age. So one in four women are age 75 and over at the time of diagnosis. But there are still a lot of women who get diagnosed under the age of 50. So about 10,000 women get diagnosed who are under the age of 50. About 7,000 or so of those are in their 40s. About just over 2,500 are less than 40. And that equates to just under 4% of all the breast cancer cases, where they're trying to develop blood tests. So they'll be able to take a blood sample from initially families who may be at high risk of developing breast cancer, if there's a family history of it. They'll be able to take a blood sample and try to give an estimate on the person's risk of potentially developing breast cancer.
This is positive, hence why I was positive when my mum was diagnosed.
So about a year ago, I had a routine smear, which I went to and had that done, and the nurse that did it, I just said that I'd noticed that on one of my breasts that my nipple had gone in and I couldn't get it back out. And she says, I think you need to make an appointment and just get checked out. It's probably nothing to worry about, but just be on the safe side. So I said, right, okay. So I made an appointment, went up to the doctor, saw this nurse. She gave me a full examination. She says, I can't really feel anything. She says, but I'm going to refer you through to the breast unit. Right, okay. She says, just to be on the safe side, she says, and don't be alarmed. She says, but I'm going to do it on a cancer referral. She says, that doesn't mean that I think you've got cancer. She says, it's just the quickest way in to get you seeing in this little waiting room at the end of the corridor. Well, by this time, I'm thinking, there's definitely something wrong. They wouldn't be doing this normally. Something's wrong. And the worst goes through your mind. I've got cancer. And it seems like an eternity sitting there. Next minute, this doctor comes through and he sits me husband down. And then he gets up and he walks out and he comes back with the breast nurse, and her name's Yvonne. And he says, from your first biopsies, we've found cancer. So, right, okay. It says they're only small, but they're there. It says you're not ill. Nothing's going to happen drastically within a week, don't worry. Everything's okay. And I says, look, let me go on our way. Let me go and have a wash. Let me compose myself, come back. I says, let's just crack on, shall we? Chemotherapy, she says, it like collapses your veins, it hardens them off. So they are harder to get in. She says, you'd be better off with a PICC line putting in. I says, well, they've sent for me to have that done. I says, but the first one was like 2 days after I'd had chemotherapy, which is the EC one. I says, there's no way I'd have made it to the hospital because it just took every piece of energy out of me. I says, I couldn't go to the toilet, I got constipation, I got no energy, I got like fuzzy head all the time, all my sinuses, my taste had gone, everything. I said, I just felt awful. I have my chemotherapy and it's my last one. So emotions are running quite high. And my daughter comes and they shout through because she can't actually sit with me while I'm having my chemotherapy because of COVID and all that lot now. There's only special circumstances. And I says to Claire, I says, can I ring my daughter to come down like while I'm on my flush? Because my flush only takes like 5-10 minutes. She says, yeah, of course she can. She comes down and they've written me a certificate out and all the nurses are all busy. And you get to know them over the time. And I gets my coat on and everything. And I goes to the bell and everything. They went like, ring it. And you have to ring it 3 times.
Okay.
There is a sign on the bell, but I can't remember what it says. And I'm ringing it and everybody's like laughing and cheering and clapping and brilliant. And they're like, the nurses come up and they're like giving you hugs. And Shannon's there and you can see her welling up. And Claire goes, I think she needs a hug, and puts her arms around her. Shannon just wells, that's it. Everything just comes out of her. She's going, it's your fault. You've made me this way. And they were like, it's wonderful. Like, get yourself out of here. You've done this bit. Move on. So I goes and I finish my chemotherapy. I've rung the bell. I go home and like, really can't believe I've got this certificate. Send the video to people and like, well done.
Things are good then. Breast cancer is survivable more than ever before, but not everyone is lucky. I met with Tim Pollard, father of Scarlett, and Nottingham's official Robin Hood.
Sal was the love of my life. We'd known each other for quite some time. She went off to university. She would occasionally write me letters. I would even less occasionally write letters back to her. And we kind of lost touch for a bit until I got into being Robin Hood. So I became Nottingham's official Robin Hood, working at the castle, working at banqueting centres and so on, which involved having other reenactors in. And Sal, by pure coincidence, was a reenactor as well. And there was one point where I needed a Maid Marian. And so I said to Sal, would you be my Maid Marian? Which sounds like an incredibly cheesy line, and it wasn't a chat-up line at all, but we worked together for ages. Really enjoyed it. And neither of us, again, thought we were going to be going out with each other. We had other partners at the time. Until after about 7 years, we went, you know, all this pretending to be in love stuff that you do, I actually really like you. I really like you too. And we got together and it was just beautiful and just brilliant. And around the time of my coming up to my 50th birthday, we discovered that Sal was pregnant, which was just joyous. Great 50th birthday present. Sadly, when Scarlett was about 18 months old, we found a lump in Sal's breast. It was indeed breast cancer. We went into the oncologist and, you know, we were sitting there and he said, I'm very sorry to tell you that it is breast cancer. And we spent what would have been our wedding night and the next 10 days that would have been our honeymoon in hospital, where she was quite poorly. When she came back after that, it was joyous. I actually literally got to carry her over the threshold, which was lovely. She was suffering a little bit with not being able to write as well, and she was getting little bits of memory loss, not significant. Sal's digestive system wasn't doing particularly well. By this time, the cancer was not only in her breast, it had spread to her brain and to her spine and other places as well. She was really suffering though, and we could see that some of her organs were starting to fail. And we had friends and family around. It was a bit chaotic, and quite a lot of people were in this room. She was in the other room, and she just, I was there, she slipped away. And that was tough. It was very tough. There's a wonderful Peter Capaldi quote from one of his Doctor Who episodes where he says, the day that people die isn't the worst. It's the rest of the days where they stay dead. And when someone dies, you're busy, you're doing stuff. I got a chance to sit with Sal right at the end, and I promised her I'd look after Scarlett. I told her how much I loved her, and I don't know if she could hear me. I like to think she did. But I made promises which are the most important promises I've ever made. They were the same as my wedding vows to her. And if she heard me, then I'm very grateful. And I hope that she, left us knowing that she was loved. So I'm now a single parent. I get on Mummy's Day, Scarlett does me cards these days, which she says, and they're to dummy, Happy Dummies Day. And the first time she did that, her teacher said, "That's a bit rude, isn't it?" And she just looked up and she went, "Well, no, it's Daddy and Mummy." And that's what he is now. So he's my dummy. So now I'm quite happy to be a dummy.
Breast cancer is survivable. It is far from a death sentence, but cases are still too high. How can we get them lower?
And how essential is checking yourself for breast cancer? Very. Yeah, it's crucial. Everybody should be self-evaluating on a regular basis. I keep on banging that drum, but obviously not loud enough, because a lot of people, even when we go out and do awareness events, there's still a lot of people who are unaware of it. So we're always taking flyers and leaflets about how best to self-evaluate. It doesn't take long, but just do it routinely on a regular basis, and it makes a tremendous difference. We have had feedback from people in the past who we've given leaflets to, and they've since come back and said, "Oh, I'm glad I picked up that leaflet. I detected a lump and I went and got it checked." So, but it works, but it's just getting that message out to folk. So that's why I'm always very happy to speak to people like you who want to know a little bit more about awareness and self-evaluation, because the more people we get that message out to, the better the survival that we're going to have from breast cancer.
Talking about stuff, generally, talk about breast cancer, talk about other cancers as well. People are more likely to get cancers these days. People are living longer, so the more people live longer, something has to go wrong, and it's, quite possibly cancer, so look out for it. I want everybody to have a long and happy and healthy life, the same way that I wish Sal could have had that. And so it's important to spread the word and not to be worried about it and not to be stressed about it, and not to avoid the word boobs. Breasts. Breasts. Check your breasts. Anyway, I'll stop blithering now, but thank you.